Heard him on WFAN radio and other media outlets. Known for his gutsy, straightforward broadcasting style, he's won 2 Emmys, and he grew up in Brooklyn playing stickball. Please join me in giving a warm Jersey Shore welcome to Russ Salzberg and, of course, Todd Frazier.
Yeah.
Hey, you.
I didn't think all those applause were going to be so nice to me. They were all for me, huh?
They're all for you.
Yeah,
all,
all for me. Well, you know what? We know this is all about Tom's River and how great it is, and baseball, and you, the native son. But I'm sure everybody, Todd, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you know, we got tons to talk about, but let's cut right to the chase, and everybody wants to know, what's the deal? Where you gonna be playing, pal? That's what everybody wants to know.
It's it's been a tricky off season here. It's been a different one. I've been with talks with both New York teams, a bunch of other teams as well, and we, you know, I know everybody wants to know what New York, when am I going with the Yankees, the Mets? Right now, I just don't know. We've been having good conversation, and we're looking for the best fit right now. So I couldn't really tell you at this first moment here.
I don't know if it's fair to ask, because I'm not, you know, I don't want to put anybody in a position to negotiate. If you had your druthers, since you were there last year, you prefer to stay with the Yankees, or business is business?
Man, you put me on the spot right here, right from the get-go.
Well,
here.
you said Yankees or Mets, so.
No, it's I love playing in New York. I love playing for the Yankees. We had a blast. Me and my family, they took us in like we were family from the get-go. I mean, the Yankees were awesome. But, you know, free agency right now. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we just got to keep on rolling and figure that out hopefully pretty soon.
I would say this, and I'm not asking you, I'm telling you just from watching. And you folks might not know this. I had the pleasure of doing a story with Todd. It was after he won the home run derby, and you were traded to the White Sox, and you were going to their first camp. And I remember walking out of your home when we did this story. I think you were leaving for spring training the next day. And we walked out, and I looked at my producer, and I says, man, this kid is a leader. And I'll never forget that. No, it's true, because then when you came to the Yankees, that leadership was on full display. And I always say this, intangibles don't count for a team until you don't have them, and then everybody worries about them. And I would say this, if you don't come back to the Yankees, that will be sorely missed to them, because if I think they lack one thing, it's veteran leadership. I think they have some great young guys, but that veteran leadership, and you took on the role. Usually guys don't just come in and all of a sudden become leaders. You were the leader in that clubhouse. I'm not just saying that, I think you know that.
I mean, that wasn't what I was trying to do. It was just one of those things where once you're on a new team, you don't want to step on anybody's toes. You don't want to be that guy. But, you know, I tried leading by example, you know, especially with the younger guys, you know, you go into that clubhouse and you see a guy like Aaron Judge, and you're like, oh, man, I got to lead this guy. And you're like, wait, hold on here. He's way up there. I'm going to tell this giant what to do and how to play the right game. But that's what I try to do, no matter how big or small. But they're a big team, and they got guys that, you know, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be really good, especially with Stanton now. So sky's the limit for that team right now.
Now, on the flip side, if you would end up being with the Mets, there we got a Met fan in the audience. We got a few Met fans in the audience. If you ended up going there, just talking, if you ended up going there, do you go with the attitude that, okay, they need my power hitting, and they need my glove, which everybody knows you supply, but also that intangible, they want me there for my leadership? And does that add pressure?
I don't think it adds pressure. I think I've been doing it my whole life. It just comes kind of natural. I think they'd want me there for power, for you know, from the get-go. You're a third baseman. You got to supply power, and then the defense comes right after that. I think everything intertwines. But at the end of the day, I think they do need that leadership, and I think they do have it right now. But if I was over there, I think it would just be that much better for them.
Now, when I give, probably the best example to me of leadership that you supplied last year with the Yankees was certainly during the playoffs when Joe Girardi was severely criticized for the replay, and you made it very clear, let's go win this one for Joe. I mean, it seemed like everybody followed that.
Yeah, it was just one of those things where he brought it up. You know, I felt terrible for him because at the end of the day, you know, it wasn't even his fault. He's a manager. You know, you have to, as a coach or a manager, you have to be responsible no matter what happens. And, you know, you feel for a guy like that. He's a great manager. He'll be sorely missed for sure. But I just felt like, hey, you know, I just said, guys, let's go. Let's pick it up for him. It was just it was as simple as that. And we just got going after that. It was the weirdest thing. We had to win 3 straight against Cleveland. We did that. Even in Cleveland, we won. And then we came back against Houston. You know, we didn't finish it, but at the same time, we made a great run, and I think we were undefeated at home. So if we had that one more game at home there, I think we would have made it.
Well, that brings me to my next question. You kind of open up the garage door for me. You within one game of one win of going to the World Series. Joe Girardi gets let go at the end of the season. We know baseball, this is a bit, nobody knows it better than you right now. You're waiting to find out what's going on. I understand if somebody says they want to make a change, they make a change. But the discussion was when Joe was let go, his communication with younger players. I'll just ask you, like to me, and I criticize the team for listen, you want to make a change, but he just led a young team with your help and few veterans within one game of the World Series, and he lacks communication with young players. That didn't make sense to me.
It's a crazy business. It really is. He managed. He was a great manager. He understood, you know, when to let go a little bit and when to force the issue a little bit. And, you know, that's between them. But I knew he was a great manager. I knew he understood. You know, he did a great job with Gary Sanchez. Everybody, you know, says about his defense and such, but he did a great job with him. They had a guy named Tony Pena, the first base coach, who worked with him every day, tireless hours, and he got better and better as he went on. So at the end of the day, I'm not a manager or coach, so I can't really speak too much about it.
Well, that brings me to my next. This guy's very good. You got to. If you don't want to stay in baseball, you can do broadcasting. Yeah. But with those leadership skills, and I'm not looking to get you retired anytime soon, but it struck me, and it struck me during those last 2 months when you went over to the Yankees. Have you thought about managing? Because you have all the qualities to be a manager.
I mean, I've talked to my family about it. It's just one of those things where, you know, never say never kind of thing. But when I'm done playing, I'd like to, you know, come back home, hang out with the family. And, you know, I always told my wife I'd like to be a high school coach. I think that's pretty cool, you know, teach a younger generation. I get to stay close to home, you know, so I can go home, have a good family meal instead of, you know, even a minor league coach. I see what they go through. It's a tough job, and even being a manager, you know, I don't think, I know I can do it, but I really don't think at this point I would want to. But you know, never say never.
Yeah, with your young family sitting in front, that's what I kind of thought. You know, managing's great if that's what you love, and baseball's in your blood. But I think of you. You know, I also think of Jorge Posada. Posada struck me as a guy who would have been a terrific manager. But I just think he didn't want to deal with media every day and being away from his family.
No, it's just one of those things where now, when I'm done playing, hopefully later down the road, you know, you're with your kids. You want to coach your kids. You want to teach them, you know, the values of life and, you know, sports too as well. So it'll be one heck of a ride, but I think it's, you know, when you're playing, you don't see your family that often. So now I got some making up to do.
You talk about teaching kids. I know you and your brothers at Frazier's Academy. Baseball is huge here in Toms River. That's for sure.
It is. Yes, it is. I mean,
how much do you enjoy dealing with obviously you can't do it as much as your brothers can because you're playing baseball, but just the whole deal of dealing with the kids and the parents.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, it's just one of those things where, you know, you see how my dad raised me. It was one of those things where get out, let's go play with your buddies. We didn't have all this. We didn't have, you know, coaches or, you know, guys teaching us, you know, going to a facility. We never had the facilities. If it hit 35 or 40 degrees, we're outside in the snow, rain, sleet. It didn't matter. And now they got, you know, teachers, which is awesome. Kids are working even harder. one of those things where I'm a firm believer in playing different sports, though. I think, once the weather changes, getting to basketball, getting to soccer, getting to football, whatever it is. And, I think that's to our advantage up here in New Jersey and in the Northeast, I think, because we don't play it all year round. And people are like, oh, man, are you not going to get better? I'm like, no, because our body gets in different movements. You play basketball, you're doing different things, different angles. So when you get a bad hop or, you're off balance swinging, you can still be in a good position to hit a baseball. So I think it's just one of those things where we have a distinct advantage of, being a better baseball players or better in sports in general.
You talk about your father, bringing you up and teaching you. And, listen, I was raised in the Little League. Anybody who played baseball was raised in the Little League. And parents are so important, but there are different types of parents. It always struck me that your parents brought you up to make sure your feet were planted squarely on the ground and never let your head get too big. Fair enough to say?
Fair enough, fair enough. And I think, not only my parents, but I think my dad told my brothers, too. I had 2 older brothers, kick his rear end if he starts getting out of hand. And, that happened a good amount of times until I finally figured out, let's go. Just be yourself. Stop being the crazy animal that I was. And, I thank them every time I talk in front of people. I say, if I didn't have 2 older brothers, I wouldn't be in this position, because they would always let me play with their guys, guys of their age, 3 or 4 years or 5 years older than me. And, eventually I was the last guy picked, and then a year goes by and I'm number 1 picked and I'm the youngest guy in the group. So, I thank them every day.
Now, in case you're wondering, I didn't take out my phone out of my pocket to make a phone call or send a text. I want you to read I want to read something to you that I received. Let me get it from Todd's former football coach. I just had it. Now I hit the wrong. Where is he? Hold on. That must be Vincent Landolfi Jr., correct? Where is he?
What's up, man?
Basically, what he said was, you and your brothers, he said you were the toughest and best he ever had, but you also played on an 11-year-old Pop Warner national champion football team. So explain to me, I want to know, folks, how many people do you think win a national championship as a football player as an 11-year-old, and the next year goes to Williamsport and becomes a World Series champion? I don't think anybody else has done that.
Yeah, very, very lucky, very lucky. Like I talk about, we played 3 different sports. We tried to excel in everything, and thanks to coaches like that, Vinny, and I wasn't that good at football. And defensive end, I wasn't that good. In offensive end, you just give me the ball, and I won't go through you. I would try to run around you, and my speed would take care of everything. But had fun playing football, man. We got lucky. We went to Disney World, and we won the whole thing. So it was pretty cool. And then the Little League, that kind of kick-started everything.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the Little League and you win the World Series. I mean, that's every Little Leaguer's dream, okay? But winning it is one thing. Talk to me about the pressure. And I don't know, I mean, some kids can handle it. Obviously, you can. Not everybody can. How did that whole thing, when it was transpiring, what was it like as a kid dealing with that? Because there's pressure. All of a sudden, you're playing before 40,000 people. That's a big deal.
Yeah, honestly, I think it was, at the end of the day, we had our practices, what we had when we were 11 and 12. And, Coach Ken Franken, obliged for me on this. We were hitting home run derbies. We were messing around the whole time. And it kind of felt like we weren't in that situation of playing in front of 40,000 people. Our coaches were kind of goofy like we were, in the best way possible. We just had the most fun ever. It's quick story. We're doing these home run derbies, and we look like the Bad News Bears in the final game, final practice we had. And we look about 200 yards down the road in Japan's doing their baseball practice, and everything is fundamentally sound. If one guy was out of line, he yelled at, have to take a lap around, and we're laughing our butts off. We're like, this is. But at the end of the day, you're looking like that's baseball too. I mean, it's 2 totally different ways of doing it, and they were so pristine, and we were just happy-go-lucky guys, and we didn't even know what we were doing. We were just playing the game of baseball, which we loved and enjoyed, and we were very lucky. We had a lot of lucky breaks, but we ended up winning the whole thing, and it's just it's unbelievable to even think about.
When you're there, that doesn't get talked about too much. I mean, we see all the shots of the different teams and people from different countries getting along. But as a kid coming from Toms River, and some people have more in their pockets than others. Did anything strike you just seeing other countries where you're kind of saying to yourself, or maybe you couldn't tell, we got it better than those kids? Not that they're treated better, they're not as well off as we are, stuff like that.
At that age, you don't really think about it, but you see, how they are, how they go about themselves. I mean, I became good friends with a kid from Saudi Arabia, and I wish I kept in touch with him to this day. But he was a great guy, great little kid. He could play baseball. I mean, you just see how they go about themselves, and they didn't take nothing for granted. And I think that's what you look at, and that's what I do in baseball too. You can't take anything for granted. Not a play, not a circumstance, not a game, and you watch other people. I'm a big believer in watching. And, I was a big believer in seeing, that guy's the best guy I'm playing against. I want to see what he does to make him the best. And I'm going to find a way to beat him. And that's how I go about myself, coming up in the minor leagues. There was guys that were ahead of me in double, triple A, and I'm like, I'm going to find a way to get in front of them, and eventually I did.
Now, I also remember the following year when Toms River was knocked out in the U.S. Championship game. Yeah. And that's, besides being on TV at the time, I was on the WFAN, and we had the manager, Mike Gaynor, on, and he said something to me. I never forgot that. It resonates with me every year, and anytime stories are being done on kids. I said to him, so, what now, Mike? And he said to me, now the kids can go back to being kids. I thought that was really interesting, especially coming from the manager. And we asked him about it, and he says, you know what? It's it's great, they love it, but it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, after we won the whole thing, we had 5 days, and then we had school. It was crazy. And then you go right, my Pop Warner team was 3 or 4 games in already, so it's like here we go. And it's great to do it as a kid. You look back, it's like, oh man, my parents did great and everything, but there were pressures. But like I said, we were just a bunch of goofy kids just playing, loving the game of baseball. And we went to the White House. We met Rosie O'Donnell. We went to the dinner called Bats, and met all these professional athletes, Reggie Jackson signing autographs, and we felt like superstars. And then the next day we're back at school, and it was so fast and so quick. But he was right. Kids finally getting back to being kids again.
Yeah, before you got back to school, though, there was something else at Yankee Stadium. Now, you're standing at shortstop with a guy by the name of Jeter. What was that like for you?
Who's Jeter?
Yeah.
No, yeah, it was cool. It was cool. Growing up, Paul O'Neill was the first guy I met, and he was one of my idols growing up. The way he played the game and how hard he played, and it was really cool. Chuck Knobloch to my left or to my right, and Luis Sojo. You pinch yourself. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh man, one day I'd like to be here. And how many guys get to say that they really are there, and they got to play there, not only just go in that stadium. I pinch myself every day. Yeah,
Toms River, to me, it's just, I mean, I haven't been to every place, but I haven't seen a better, not just, I shouldn't just say Little League, but really baseball community, at least not in New Jersey. Some years back, he followed you, I think, by 2-3 years. Ryan Doherty, who was a 7'1" pitcher. It was at Toms River East.
Yeah.
Toms River East. And I remember driving up with my camera guy, and we looked at the place. Where am I coming to Yankee Stadium? I mean, the complex, and I remember the manager, I forget his name, but the manager said to me, he says, yeah, college coaches come recruiting here. They says, how the hell are we getting a kid to come to our place? It's not as good as your place.
Yeah, you think back to those days, and Bill Frank was the manager at Toms River East, and Ken Frank at South. It's just one of the most coveted, high school matchups, and not only New Jersey, and I think the United States. I mean, when I played Little League, we'd have thousands of people there. When we played high school, thousands of people would come, and the stadium was, I call it a stadium. The high school field was packed. It's a unique place to play at where I went to high school. The school is part of the outfield. There's all these little intricacies that come into play, and I remember like it was yesterday. We had one of these practices where the whole team, we're facing Doherty the next day, and the whole team was just so fired up. We're screaming left and right, and we're gonna get him, we're gonna knock him down, and all this stuff. High school kids being crazy, and we ended up beating them 6-1, and everybody's like, "Man, how'd you do it?" I said, "How'd we do it? We knew we were gonna get them all along." So that's the confidence that Ken Frank instilled in us, and he's doing to a lot of players and students now.
You talk about pressure, and pressure goes to each level. I remember the manager telling us the story when when Doherty was being recruited to Notre Dame, and he went for a visit. Dick Vitale and Digger Phelps basically accost him and say, 7'1", you got to play basketball here.
Dickie V's crazy, man. I got to know him too. He's nuts, but I think unfortunately he had a little heart problem. I think Ryan did, so he couldn't really play any more sports after that. But good guy. But that there's pressure too as well. Let's go. How many? You want to play a different sport? I got offered a couple of different sports too as well to play. But you got to understand what's going to help you in the long run.
Actually, just a side note, Ryan Doherty ended up going to California to be a beach volleyball player.
Yes, I did hear that.
Yes,
I did hear that.
But
I mean, that's a good idea too. Just stand up there like this.
Nothing wrong being 7'1", hanging out on a beach. The money's better playing baseball, though. I will tell you that.
A goalie. I think a goalie would have been good too.
We've been talking about pressure and what. Obviously, there's a lot of parents and grandparents and kids. So explain this to me. Your parents are the example of the right way. Where do you think it has to be drawn the line? And you deal with kids, and your brothers deal with kids with the academy. Should it be fun? To me, it should always be fun. But when does a parent have to sit back and say, okay, he's this good, but he's not that? It's not a babysitting situation.
It's a fine line. It's a very, very fine line. I haven't had the chance. My oldest son is 3, but you see when you're working with a kid, you see sometimes the parent might be in the background pressuring the kid to, come on, do this, do that, or the parent just sits back. I mean, it's a fine line. It's just one of those things where you got to be realistic. I think that's the biggest thing as a parent. You got to be realistic about, is he good enough or is she good enough, or what really is best for your child. And sometimes you have to sit back, let them learn on their own, or sometimes take them by the side. I'm a big believer in letting them make the mistakes on their own. I think that's what I'm going to do with my kids. Let them make mistakes on their own and talk to them afterwards. And it's not going to be an everyday thing, but it's just one of those things where they have to learn on their own. And I think having a good backbone with the coaches and with other veteran people and guys coming in and saying he's good, but guess what, he might not be as good as this guy. And that's tough to hear as a parent. And it's just one of those things where you have to be realistic and you can't fight it. It's tough.
No, but you're right. It is tough as a parent, but again, everybody's got to know what the score is, including the kid. The kid can be good, but maybe he's not that good, and maybe the parents are allowing him to think he's better than he is. That becomes a dangerous situation as well.
Yeah, I think you should breed confidence in your child. I think that's 100% true. Breeding confidence, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things where, you don't want to lead them on the wrong path, but hey, you talk to them, sit them down. Hey, what do you think? How you feeling? What's going on? What's in your mind? I think that's a big thing that I would love to, I'm going to do with my kids. How you feeling? What do you think about this? What'd you do in this situation where you could have done better in that situation? And, I don't have all the answers. I know that, and that's me being realistic. But, when it comes to baseball, I think I know a little more than, the next guy. But at the same time, understand what your child likes to do and what he loves, and push him along that way, and don't push him too much.
You said something very important earlier. Kids should play all sports. You played all sports. I think we're getting to a point now with, I don't know how many games, there's the travel teams and this and that. Is it getting to a point in all sports where it's almost too much, where it's too many games, too many practices, and you wonder sometimes when they get up to that level, is there a burnout for kids?
I believe in it. I believe in that 100%. I think the kids are playing way too much. I think, Little League is starting to go scarce around here, and I think it's that travel ball that's taken over, which is fine. I don't mind travel ball, but all year round kind of thing, I think that's tough. It's tough on a kid. You say burnout, I think injuries. I think these kids at a younger age, the percentages of Tommy John surgeries for kids that are in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 12, 13, 14, it's phenomenal. And, and that's in a bad way. And it's just one of those things where, guys, even we talk about parents, he's got to lift early. No, I don't think, for me, I don't think it's a good idea, but others might think that way. You don't want to tell them no, but at the same time, different sports, and, these kids need to preserve their arms. And I think that's the biggest thing. And you throw too much, you start throwing those curveballs at a young age, and next thing you know, you're 13 years old, and you got a sling on, you got Tommy John. The kid doesn't even really know what it is. So I think those are one of the things about being a parent and understanding that, hey, let's take a month off and let's evaluate you after that.
Well, you talk about injuries at a young age, and let me tell you something. I don't know about everybody here, but I'm sick of 6 innings, give up a couple of runs, and that's a quality start. I mean, and I certainly do believe, just what you brought up, that to me, these kids come up, those arms have a wear and tear on them. I remember sitting with Ron Guidry, and I asked him about it, and he shook his head. He said, they're babying these kids. They should baby the guys who are like 9 and 10-year veterans, but these young guys are horses, but it's not in the majors. They're doing that, from what I understand, in the minors, in the young minors. They're just not building up that situation. Is it just a mindset that you think that the whole game has just changed?
I think that's a great question you bring up. I think guys are throwing a lot harder now. There's no other way of looking at it. They're throwing a lot harder. You got guys that are coming out of the bullpen 95 plus, and if you're throwing low 90s, you better have some devastating. You better be like Mariano Rivera with a nasty cutter. And I think that's why, I guess, babying them per se is because they throw that hard. I mean, the guys, if you haven't had Tommy John surgery yet in the major leagues, you're doing great, but eventually something's not going to click. And I think that's the reason. You see when we talk about percentages, again, they're going sky high with injuries for pitchers. And at the end of the day, when you're throwing that hard, sometimes you need to give your arm a rest. But I ask guys all the time, and when I was with the Cincinnati Reds, and I asked these old timers, I'm like, how did you throw, 3 games in 4 days, and you threw 150 pitches each game? Oh, Sonny, I just long tossed. I'm like, that's not that. What are you talking about? You just long tossed. I don't know what you mean. He's like, that's it. I throw from pole to pole. I'm like, okay, well, I don't think we can do that now. So give me a better answer. He's like, I drank beer. I'm like, all right, whatever you say. So we joke about it, but. I'm like, well, the real reason, you probably threw like 80. He's like, no. They told me I threw 100. So we joke around back and forth, and it's a tough answer. It's a tough question to answer.
Let's get back to you and your career. Well, it also goes in line with training. In the old days, guys would show up at training camp just to get in shape. It's not that way anymore, is it? If you come in out of shape, you're in the doghouse right away.
Yeah, you see it. A couple of guys did that. They're all over the newspaper. But yeah, you take about 3 weeks to a month off, and you're hitting the weights the whole time, hitting the weights. And I started hitting mid-December, and I've been hitting pretty much every other day since. So I know I'm gonna get a lot of swings and a lot of ground balls. So definitely don't need that many swings, but. I feel like the older I'm getting, the less swings I do need in the off season, because I've been there before, and I understand that if I do need extra swings in spring training, I'll get them.
Not you, but do you see the players, not just teammates on other sides, can guys work out too much? Because all of a sudden, let me tell you, I never heard of oblique injuries, a strained oblique or this and that, and now are all these injuries, is it overwork with some certain guys?
Yeah, you ask my wife. She wants me to be more muscular, but I got the love handle, so I'm telling you. I knock on wood, I haven't had an oblique injury. I say, because, honey, I do need that fat on the side. You see these guys that are muscular getting injured all the time, and she's like, oh, well, they look good. I said, well, I feel good, so whatever happens. But, you know, at the end of the day, I work out not to get big, just to, you know, maintain, get stronger. And, you know, I'm not Mark McGuire or anything, but, you know, I can hit a ball a long way still.
No, that's for sure. So let me ask you this. We'll get back to you and your performance. I read someplace that one of the things you want to get back to or work on, obviously the power and the glove is there, that you want to work on getting the average back up. How do you work on getting the average back up where you want to make sure you're not doing one thing to take away from something else, that something else might be your power?
Yeah, I think last year what I worked on was two-strike hitting a lot more. I choked up. I got on top of the plate. I think I was top 5 this year in seeing pitches. I think that was another big thing that I needed to, you know, do. Not swinging at the first pitch every time necessarily. But, you know, for me, it's just understanding what they're going to throw to me. I mean, the situation takes care of that, you know. For example, second and third, 2 outs, and, you know, we got a guy that's not a power hitter up next. Am I going to see something good? I might get one good pitch, but at the same time, they're trying to tinker away or trying to, you know, find a way to get it in on me. No, I don't need to swing at all those pitches. And if I get 2 strikes, they're still going to try to do the same thing. So understanding the situation, have knowledge of what the guy did to you last time, and you go from there.
You know, one thing about being a professional athlete, I don't care what sport it is, you got to have a short memory. I mean, you're striking out here, you're getting up the next time at the plate. But again, a lot of guys can't do that. How do you separate, you know, like, because in base, listen, if you're successful 30% of the time, you're doing real good. You can make a lot of money in baseball. But how is it, and listen, when you were coming up, you go from being in Little League to high school, you're a great hitter. All of a sudden you get to a different level and, well, now I'm striking out more and I'm not hitting for that high average. How difficult is that to cope with immediately, saying, geez, this is a lot harder than it looks?
Baseball is a game of failures. It's a game of failures. I've been there before. I mean, I've been there in high school. My senior year, I thought the world was going to end. I've never, you know, I struggled for 3 weeks. It felt like 2 years I've been struggling. And, you know, the thing I go back to is, you know, how did I play as a little leaguer? Just have so much fun. You know, I'm a guy that likes watching film about, you know, when I hit home runs. We call them feel goods. So it's one of those things where we talk about that all the time. You know, if you're 30% from the free throw line, you're not going to be playing the game. If you're 30%, you know, completing passes in football, you're not going to be a quarterback. So in, you know, baseball, you know, it's unbelievable to think that you can be 30% in something. You know, maybe even 200 or 25%.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And considered a really good player. So we just got to keep on working.
No, the game of baseball probably looks easier than all the other games. But, you know, I still maintain hitting that baseball, you know, a lot of people will agree that is the single hardest thing to do in sports because, as you just said, if you're good 25% of the time, that's pretty damn good.
It's phenomenal. And, you know, me and my wife have this argument because she was a gymnast. She says, you know, get on a balance beam, a 3-inch balance beam, and that's the hardest thing to do. And, you know, we have a little arguments here and there, but it is. Hitting a round ball with a round bat is definitely is the hardest thing to do in sports.
Have you seen teammates and players, some are better than the others, in coping with leaving it, you know, don't let your offense affect your defense, don't let your defense affect your offense?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's the rigors of the sport. You have to find a way to be, you know, as professional as possible. You know, you go to third base, you just struck out with the bases loaded, 1 out. You know, the guy might be yelling at you from the back there. You just got to go with it. And you know that next time, you know, you're going to do it. And you can have so many opportunities getting the job done that, you know, don't get too frustrated over that one player, that one instance where you didn't get the guy in. You know, you just got to keep on going. And hopefully at the end of the year, your stats are where they'll be.
I know one thing that I'm sure everybody here, you know, got to see, and your reaction really was like gut-wrenching when a little girl got hit with the baseball. And I'll tell you what, I remember taking my daughters to games. If I was sitting on the right field side, the first base side, I would always make sure I'm seated here and my kids were to the right of me, and vice versa on the other side. What was that like for you? Because, I mean,
Yeah.
to see you looking down, I had pain for you, so I could only imagine what you were going through.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was terrible. Just one of those things where I hit it, and I'm like, oh, no. You just know it right away. You know, you feel it. And, squared that little girl up in the face. But lo and behold, she's doing great now. She had a couple facial fractures, but yeah, it was just one of those things where I actually cried. I went back in the dugout. I didn't.
Everybody could see you weren't yourself.
Yeah, I didn't even want to go back out there, but I said just finish the game, and because when you have kids too, it hits you at home. So. I really thought I crushed that little girl. I thought she was dead, to be honest.
God forbid.
It's terrible, but she's doing fine, and hopefully all the teams can get those nets up.
Well, now they are getting the nets up. How do the players feel about that? The netting being up.
I haven't really talked to many of them, but I think they wanted it. Just after that instance, there's been a lot more plays like that. I think there was like 3 or 4 that happened at Yankee Stadium, whether in the upper deck or down below. Everybody's on their cell phone. You come to a game to watch a game, and a lot of people are trying to get the next picture and send it. But it is. It's not fun. It's not fun for us, and it's definitely not fun for the people.
It is. I was thinking about that though. When those nets are up, that is going to affect certain guys reaching over to grab a foul ball.
Sure. But we'd rather have everybody going home happy and healthy than at the end of the game, at the end of the day, it's just a game too as well. You want to win. You want to win the World Series, but guess what? Both teams have to play with that net too.
Getting back to you, we know who you're negotiating with or what's going on. Do you take into consideration Yankee Stadium, Citi Field, measurements, how I'm going to do, or that doesn't, no. or the biggest statistic is the dotted line. What are you giving me?
You're pushing a little bit here. No, honestly, we're just trying to find the best fit, and we haven't, at the end of the day, figured out where that'll be. There's a lot of options, and when you have a lot of options and you're a free agent, you can figure that out what you really want to do. And I've been working hard with my agent. I just got off the phone with him before I got here. I can't really tell you what he said, but
you sure?
No, I'm positive.
100%.
Well, it was all positive stuff, and it's like what the GMs and presidents do. They don't say much, so ball's in my court now. So,
how difficult is it? When did you come up as a young guy? When did it strike you that this is a business? You know what and not to let it get the best of you, because arbitration and things get said because it's a negotiation, and then people get upset and feelings get hurt.
Yeah, I think 2 instances. When they trade a big guy away, like a really good athlete, you're like, man, how can you get rid of him? And that's the first time when I saw it. And then a couple years ago, when a good friend of mine, excuse me, Brett Laurie, he wasn't getting along with the players. He wasn't getting along with the coaches, and I told him, I said, Brett, you got to calm down. Something's going to happen. And eventually, they just got rid of him, and I felt terrible for the guy because he's a really good athlete, and still a really good friend of mine. But that business, if one thing goes wrong for you, it's like a topple effect. You got to figure out a way to get out of it, and guys making millions of dollars, and like, we'll just get rid of them, and there goes $5 million or whatever it is off the the pay sheet, and that's nothing to them. So it's a crazy business.
I mean, I saw you interacting with people before, but there were certain guys, and I'm not saying it because you're sitting here, because I know you, but certain guys are much better with fans than other guys. Certain guys are very amenable to signing and this and that. How do you view that? Not everybody has the same personality, but you seem to take it as pretty much it's part of my job.
Definitely is. I was that young kid that wanted the autograph, that came to the game an hour before, and I always get out there at least a half hour before, stretch, and take at least 10 minutes to sign some autographs. And I think that's part of your job. You don't see. You wish you saw more athletes and ball players do that, but some people like doing other things before games. And I think taking 10 minutes out of your day before a game, it kind of relaxes you too, because we joke around, we tell stories, and it kind of gets me going for the game. And that's kind of stuff. You see a kid, you sign an autograph, you never know when it's their first time coming to watch that game, and you can hopefully leave a lasting impression on them.
Yeah, you've heard stories like, you know, why I think it was Joe DiMaggio. Why do you always run it out to do this and that? Because I don't know if somebody's watching me for the first time,
Exactly.
or if it's the last time. I want to make sure they get the right impression.
Exactly. And you know, Joe DiMaggio is one of the best, but you know, I'm just trying to fill in all these guys' shoes, and you know, we do. We have a job and a duty to you know, give back, and you know, hopefully one of the days those young kids can come up, and maybe they're Major League Baseball players. You know, they'll do the same thing, hopefully.
One final question before we let some fans ask questions. How difficult is it? You hear all these stories about the New York media in the metropolitan area. You seem to handle it very well. Was it a big adjustment coming from Cincinnati to like having 100 microphones in your face almost every day, especially when you're playing on a winning team?
Everything was good until I saw you in the clubhouse. That was the biggest deal. No, you know, growing up in it, yeah, I kind of, you know, growing up, Kevin Kiernan, a good friend of mine, you know, we did Little League World Series together. Just one of those things where it's kind of natural. You know, I told I told guys, I said, hey, just think before you say something. It's one of those things where, you know, if you have to take 5 seconds in between questions, do it. You know, it's just one of those things where if you say one little thing wrong in that sentence, they're going to blow it up, and there's going to be a headline where you're not going to like. And, you know, most of the time, all these guys understand that. And during the playoffs, we had literally every time the game was over, we had at least a half hour after the game where he had at least 50 to 100 cameras and microphones in our faces, and everybody had a great question, and then you would say something that would get me fired up.
Yeah, there you go.
It was good. It was
Always blame the little guy.
No, but
Hey.
it just comes natural. That's it.
How good is this guy, folks? All right. Well, we have some people in the audience with microphones, so people could ask you questions. So where are we going first?
Hello, Todd.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. You guys play 162 games in a year, and you're going 6 days a week. You get 1 day off. Tell me what a typical day off is for a Pro Bowl player.
For me, it's pretty boring, if you want the truth. They got guys like to golf. They get up early in the morning and go get after it. I sleep in. I try and get as much sleep as I can, and I'm pretty much I'll have like a late breakfast, 12:31. Probably go back, watch a movie, doze off again, and then get some dinner with a bunch of the guys. If nobody's there, I'll go to the nearest mall, be alone, or go see a movie. I'll be honest with you, I don't mind doing all that stuff, and I'll come back, and then the next day I'm not doing so well because I'm not used to that schedule. So I'm a guy that just wants to relax the whole time. You got it.
Did the married guys and the single guys play it 2 different ways?
No, not really. No, I like hanging out with all those guys. It's all good. Don't matter.
Okay. Other questions?
Hey, Todd.
Hey, what's up, man?
How are you?
Good.
I know we touched on it in your previous discussion, but my question deals with you as a person. And we know that baseball is now a business. It's still a sport, but it is a business. How did you take the trade from Cincinnati to Chicago? You were considered an icon in Cincinnati. The media loved you. The fans loved you. Had a chance to spend a weekend, and it was very obvious where you stood with that team to be traded to Chicago, and then from Chicago to the Yankees. I'm curious to hear how you felt. And I have one other question, and I'll pass it on.
I'll be honest with you. I wasn't happy when I got traded from Cincinnati to Chicago. I remember I was having my second child was on the way. I got traded 2 days before I had my second child. And you know, it was we talk about the business. And, you know, I'm just remembering now that I told him, I said, hey, you know, I want to play here for the rest of my life. And you know, the president said we're going to make that happen. And then a week and a half later, I got traded. So we're talking about this crazy business, and you know, that's where it started. So you kind of, you know, that's what we talk. Don't take anything for granted. And then next thing you know, I'm traded from Chicago to the Yankees, and boom, I'm going from downhill to way back uphill. And it was, I've been very fortunate, and that's one of the biggest moments of my life.
The other question was, having played in both leagues, both as a National League player and American League player, the purist will say that the National League plays baseball, whereas in the American League, it's not really the same game. But we know that spectators want to see runs scored. So from your perspective, do you enjoy playing the American League versus the National League? And which league has the better pitchers? And who is the one that has your number?
That was 3 questions in one, so you know.
And you think I'm a pain in the neck?
He's lucky because he told me in the state final game, he's one of my coaches, you know, this guy's throwing low fastballs, and he threw a little fastball, hit a homer in the state final. He's lucky. I'll answer all 3 for him. But I like both leagues. Both leagues are great. I'll be honest with you. I think the pitching's a little better in the American League. You know, you can go up and down the line. You can have the discussions at a bar, and you know, you think about the pitchers they had, and you know, going back and forth. And what was the last question? I'm sorry. Oh, the toughest pitcher. God, there's a whole bunch of them. Corey Kluber, he's phenomenal. Oh man, he's got 5 different pitches, and you got to sit on one. And you know, I remember one at bat, I sat on his cutter the whole time, 3 straight fastballs right down the plate. I said, all right, what am I supposed to do then? So there you go. That's why you don't guess when you hit.
Let me just interject real quickly. Corey Kluber, why did the Yankees have so much success against him in the playoffs?
We had a good game plan. It was just one of those things where, you know, we know he threw hard, but, you know, we kind of sat soft. We sat on his off speed a little bit, and he threw a lot more that day and the other days before. And thank God for Didi Gregorius, because he hit those 2 big home runs.
Boy, did he ever. We also will talk about something else. That's one guy, correct me if I'm wrong, who is a leader on that team.
Without a doubt. You know, I came up with him in Cincinnati, and he was 150 pounds soaking wet. He was 17 years old with cornrows in his hair, and I always told him he always looked like Serena Williams when they were really young. And he's like, oh, don't you be talking to me like that, Frazier. And we were laughing. I'm like, you're too much. And now he's about, you know, 215 solid, and I tell him that all the time. And he was my locker mate, so we had a good time.
He was pretty funny, though, was saying I don't think he doesn't think he's going to be hitting 4th anymore on the Yankees.
He might. You never know.
Next question there.
Go ahead.
What would you do for a living if you weren't a baseball player?
It's a good question. I'd probably be a special ed teacher. I think that was something I really wanted to do. And, yeah. I went to, you know, I went to Rutgers, who didn't have those programs, but I was a communications major, maybe doing something like him, and one of those things, be a broadcaster. I think that'd be pretty nice.
Who's your favorite friend? Who's your best friend on the Yankees?
Oh, that's a tough one. Oh, I had a lot.
Yeah, go ahead, Slick. Answer that one. Yeah, I'm all ears, pal.
Oh man, I would go with CC Sabathia, man. He was awesome, awesome guy. He was good.
That's kind of funny that you say that because, again, leaders stick together. Because you were one, he was certainly one of the other ones.
100%.
What was your favorite memory as a baseball player?
Favorite memory? Oh man. You know, you always want your first. You know, I would say my first home run. I would say that would always etch in my mind, because you're always, you know, at your age, you're always in the backyard saying, "Oh, home run, Yankee Stadium, home run, and you know, Met Stadium." And when I finally hit that first home run, I was running and I didn't feel my legs. It was probably one of the coolest moments ever.
Anybody else?
Go ahead, man.
Hello, my name is Owen.
Nice to meet you.
How long have you been playing baseball?
I started at 6 years old, and I'm 31 now, so that would be 20.
Well, you're good math,
25 years, right? Yeah, 25 years.
Thank goodness you have an agent.
25. Yep, 25.
Do you have any pre-game rituals?
No, I'm not really. I'm just one of those guys where I like to have. This is pretty weird, I'll be honest. But I always had, and this just happened at Yankee Stadium when I got there, because when I tried these, I said I got to have 4 of these before every game. And there was, you know those Otis Spunkmeyer cookies from Subway? And I told him, I said, if you burn them, I'm not going to have a good day. And then the one time he burnt them, I was like 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. But I get them really soft and really gooey, and I have 4 of those like 45 minutes before the game.
And now we know where the love handles come from, too.
You're good. You're good.
How many home runs have you hit?
How many total? I think I have 179 home runs. Yeah.
Any more?
I think we're done.
Is it? Got a microphone up there? Our last question? Okay.
What's up, Todd?
Where are we at? Hey, how you doing?
A Met fan that got on the Yankee bandwagon last year, watching you every day.
Thank
Loved
you.
it. That was a great run. Yankees made a big mistake not signing you for the year. You add a lot to that team.
Thank you.
You bring something special. Hope you come to the Mets. I want to ask you, in Cincinnati, when you played in Cincy, Pete Rose, how much do they love him in Cincinnati?
Oh man, you say something bad about that guy in Cincinnati, you're gonna get kicked out of that bar or get your behind whooped. Yeah, he was the man. He still is. I see him. He works in Vegas now. I saw him a couple years ago, and you know, he taught me a little bit about my swing that I really didn't know about. And when you learn something from him, you're all ears and all eyes. And it was phenomenal just to be in his presence. And in Cincinnati, you don't talk bad about Pete Rose. That's one thing you don't do.
Met fans remember '73 with Buddy Harrelson. We still remember that fight.
Well,
What do you think about him in the Hall of Fame?
That's a great question. I think he should be. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. It's one of those things where I think he's paid his dues. I think he's paid his time. It's been long enough. I think he deserved that penalty. I think he deserved it. I think now it's one of those things where he's the hit king. How do you leave one of the best hitter in baseball ever off of there? He didn't take steroids. He went about his business the right way. He made a big mistake, and guess what? He paid his dues. It's been over 25 years, I think. Let the guy in.
I second that emotion.
Thanks, Todd. Good luck this year.
Thank you.
Big fan now. You know that.
Thank you.
You know what, when we talk, before we say goodbye, but when we talk about Pete Rose, to me, forget about trouble that he's been in. I'm just talking about playing now. He's the example of what hard work is, because when they talk about 5'2" players, he didn't have a great arm. No. He did not run fast. Nope. He was not a power hitter. But he worked his tail off, and he was Charlie Hustle, and as you say, he's the hit king.
Without a doubt, 100%.
But this guy's the hit king of Tom Rivers. How great is this guy?
Pleasure,
buddy. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.